what I realized is a lot of companies think marketing is the solution to sales, and sales is going to grow their business. But many people don't realize that their business is a boat, and if there's pieces and holes that you don't clog up, you're not going to sail.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Build, the podcast where innovation meets collaboration in the world of construction. We bring together thought leaders and industry experts to explore the cutting-edge ideas transforming construction equipment, supply chains, building materials, and workforce productivity.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by Faro, the revolutionary last-mile logistics platform, redefining how high-value, time-sensitive construction deliveries get done. Need it fast? Need it right? Faro.
Hey everyone, today we are joined by Erika Giuggio, a business optimization specialist who helps construction companies uncover hidden expenses and put real money back into their operations. Through her work at Schooley Mitchell, Erika helps contractors and equipment rental companies and other companies in the construction space reduce costs in areas like telecom, software, shipping, fuel, facilities, and more without disrupting daily operations. Today, we're going to be exploring how cost reduction can boost operational productivity, where companies lose money without realizing it, and how equipment rental and other construction companies can protect and even boost their bottom lines, even as expenses rise in the industry. Erika, welcome to Beyond the Build.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm curious how you got to where you're at. Like, what's the quick elevator pitch of what got you into, this facet of construction?
So let's actually backtrack that even a little bit more.
Yep.
So I was in the marketing space, and what I realized is a lot of companies think marketing is the solution to sales, and sales is going to grow their business. But many people don't realize that their business is a boat, and if there's pieces and holes that you don't clog up, you're not going to sail. So this is actually how I got into Schooley Mitchell, where we help businesses save on expenses. And when I started tackling different industries, I just noticed that construction is a mess. They're very focused on the trade and pouring the concrete and making sure everything is all aligned. But when you go home at the end of the day, do you want to sit in front of QuickBooks and see who's giving you the best deal? Or do you just want to crack open a beer at a 15-hour day? And the problem is it's like a diet. People say, oh, tomorrow. It piles up. And I said, bingo, this is a fantastic opportunity to help construction save on these expenses because you guys work hard.
Yeah. And, from my experience, in construction, it's always either one or you're good at one thing and not so good at the other. It's like I'm really talented in my trade, but on the business side, I don't know where any of my money is, and I'm not sure how to finance the next job. Or you get the reverse effect where it's like I'm not really that good at the trade, but I'm really good at hiring people in a business. So it's like, how do you mix both of those?
Exactly. And sometimes you have to say to yourself, you know what? I'm good at this. I'm going to focus on this and let me just hire it out.
And being able to identify where, like you said, sometimes it's not even a hole in the boat. It's just a crack that's slowing you down. But when you have all of these different little cracks, you're not even realize that you have drag. And I see this with a lot of organizations because for us, we're on the service side, helping the logistics, spent 2 decades in the equipment rental industry, helping contractors, getting equipment, boosting labor productivity, and figuring out hey, you're getting micro crack to sinking, because there's so many, and a lot of times you don't even realize that water's coming in because the crack isn't big enough to make a puddle.
Exactly. It's kind of like if you go to the doctor, right? You're not going to go to the doctor until there's a problem.
Yep. Typically.
Very true. And my wife tells me, because she was in medicine, and guys are the worst too. We only go to the doctor for 3 reasons. And, I can say 2 on the podcast. So the last one will be a little bit, unkosher, but it's like either our spouse, our girlfriend, or anybody is nagging us and we're like, yeah, I'll go get checked. Or we have a gaping hole in our body and it's bleeding and we can't get it to stop.
Yeah, the
And
duct tape's not working, so got to get bigger duct tape.
Bigger duct tape. And the third thing is something's not working and we got to figure that out. But outside of that, we just keep our head down and we just keep going. And I think that's what the trades do too.
100%. And then when I'm looking at their debit and expenses side, is just I just sometimes don't know where to start, and we tackle it one day at a time, but there's just a lot of pieces that it actually drives me crazy because you could drive the car straight, but there's all these twists and turns. We get there eventually, but there's just a lot of missing pieces.
How do you identify those? Like, what are some of the big initial red flags that you've noticed is kind of really common with those in the construction industry that you've helped, that you always are on the lookout for when kind of doing the initial evaluation?
Okay, so let's talk construction rentals. So let's start with the biggest one. So the biggest one that we find in savings is merchant services. Merchant services, those types of businesses, I can find between $50,000 to $100K in savings just from the interchange fees. It does depend on the transactions going in and out. The amount that they charge is crazy, and people don't know that they can actually negotiate those. Or if, for example, you've got a company doing, let's say they're overseas, they're doing work in the US or Canada, and they want to use your company to do something on a site. Well, because they're using their card from a different country, you have to pay even more of an interchange fee.
Yeah, getting that international transaction fee.
Yes, and those are things that you could take away, you can negotiate. Sometimes there's even, like a flat fee that you can actually put in there instead. So, I've seen savings between 50,000 to 100K just within 4 to 6 weeks of having that negotiation. The other thing you have to look at as well is within that fee, if you have somebody who has a very nice Amex, if they're who at the end of the day, you're paying for their vacation. Uh, That's why sometimes, not you guys, but if I go to the nail salon, there's a reason why they say, "Oh yeah, we'll just take cash, no tax, just cash." Because they got to pay for that. You guys got to pay for that, unfortunately. I get to go on vacation, but you have to pay for that.
Yeah, it's the merchant. And in the States, they're still, even in 2026, you go to some places, retail stores, and it's asked, hey, what's your cash price? Some of them will actually still take that and be like, okay, yeah, here's a cash price for it.
I do that all the time. If I go to a restaurant, I'll say, "Hey, if I pay cash, is it gonna make a difference?" And if it's like one of those ethnic restaurants, 8 times out of 10, they're like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. We're gonna take 10% off." It even says it sometimes on the bill, which is crazy. But that's just one example. We did a construction company as of recently with telecom and, their merchant services. It was a little bit of a smaller company, but we did 26,000. Another one we did, it was in steel. That was 99,000 across telecom, payment processing, and software. So I'd say merchant is one of our biggest, but I have other ones as well that I see a lot of, I would say, mismanagement.
Hmm. I'm curious. You mentioned the restaurant story, which I find interesting and a bit charming, but do you think that's why you're such a good fit in your profession? Or do you find yourself to be a frugal person that's always looking for, like, a cheap is a cheap word to use in this case, but
Opportunity.
yeah. But are you that type of person who's always looking for, what they say, you watch the pennies and the dollars watch themselves, like that's a saying.
You know what? I'm gonna say no. I actually will spend money where I think the value is. And I think that's one of the beauties of working with us, or even just in general. Like I would, even if it's something in marketing or another category that I've experience on, I don't think cheap is always the best. What value are they bringing to you? Just because, let's say, a shipping company is cheaper, you want that shipment on time. So I look at it both ways. You need to have both of those elements. I'll say to some construction companies, we'll go through telecom, for example, and they'll say, "Oh, but I want, we've got 3,700 vendors across the US and Canada, so I can get you that cheapest rate." But if you're out in the boonies, maybe that particular company doesn't have service over there. Maybe it's roaming. Who pays for that roaming charges? Yeah, you get a better deal, but now you're paying roaming. Or if it doesn't, or if, let's say, for example, it doesn't work in certain areas, what money did you save? You didn't save. You spent more. So I look at, you got to look at both. I look at customer service. I think that's a big element too. It's really what the client wants, I would also say. And even for myself, what is the value that this is going to bring? When I first got into business, this kind of stuff, I didn't even look at it. I just went to Stripe. I said, you know what? This is a reputable company. We're going to go with it. And that's it. I think it's more of, people don't know what's actually out there, because let's use the biggest companies of telecom in the US. You've got AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile. There's the big five. They spend a lot of money on marketing, but there's other companies that also don't spend money on marketing that will get you the same thing, just you're not paying for their marketing. So that's how I kind of look at it. It's not always who's being cheap, but you got to look at the company structure and also what you need in your firm. I don't always go for the cheapest. If someone comes to me and says, "I want the cheapest," but they want, everything to be up here, you're not going to get it. It's the same thing in construction. Do you want something done fast? It's maybe, and let's say that's done in an hour, but that actually takes 10 hours to do. What do you think is going to come out of that?
Yeah, it's the age-old saying, we have three things. You pick two, right? It's cost, speed, and quality. Very rarely do you get to have all three. We like to pride ourselves fair, like we're a unicorn. We can get you all three. My question would be to you is, let's take a real life scenario that we interact with, like large institutional companies, right? In the rental space, on their P&L, outside third party shipping is like taboo. It's kind of like, ooh, we don't want to do that. That's the cost line that we don't want to touch. But at the same time, it's so small on their P&L that they're like, it's one of those necessary things that we need, so we don't really look at it. And when we come into, I call it the cost for convenience, we'll go into these legacy locations and like, well, we've always done it this way, and we always had these local vendors, and we always had these people that we just do, so it's familiar. And then we're coming in and saying, but there's a different way to approach this. Not only do you get all the things that you've been asking for that your current provider doesn't, give you, which helps accelerate your business, but there's also a cost reduction associated with that. So how do you influence these institutional large corporations who have independent locations that kind of act independently of the large umbrella, and start slowly chipping away and saying, I know it's not a big thing on the table, but in my analogy, I told JP one time, it's like having a fork. A fork is kind of irrelevant in carrots to the meal unless you're eating spaghetti. You're like, how are you going to eat that? So how do you train them to say, hey, you got to kind of look at this. Don't just go for the cost of convenience and continue to do it as you've always done it, because you don't have the time or you don't want to put the energy into readapting. What do you do with that?
I do this in a couple of different ways. And I would say in all of the businesses that I've run, I find out what is actually preventing them right now from moving forward. So, for example, if they have a challenge going into 2026, let's say they don't have enough funding, I will use that angle to say, hey, listen, you know what? Why don't we look at your vendors here? And you know what? I could probably find 100 grand for you. And what I'll use that as like as a position, but I'll just tell them, I'll say, listen, I'm gonna give you a free audit. I just need access to the back end of some of your accounts. You don't have to touch nothing right now other than just give me that information. I'm gonna show you what we can save. And by the end of it, you can decide if it's something that you want to move forward with. Now, some people might say, like what you just said, they're stuck in their ways. They don't want to change. That's it. What we'll actually do is we'll go to that vendor and we'll say, listen, just so you know, you're getting compared right now with some other vendors in the circle. So you can either do two things. You can either give us a better price and sharpen the pencil, or we're going to cancel this contract. And I think the other thing too is because there's ways around contracts that not everybody on construction companies don't have a team that understands how to go through terms and conditions. There's ways to cancel contracts. Telecommunications, everyone thinks they're logged in for 2 years for something. There's ways you can break it. Not always, but 9 times out of 10 you can break it. So that's how, number one, we can position it. Number two, what I'll tell them is if let's say they get $200,000 back, that's either, depending on the position, that's one or two salaries of someone in the company. So I try to position it as something that they're working towards, and that's kind of how I interject. But at the end of the day, it's money that you get back. It's it's almost a no-brainer, or sometimes I'll even say, by the way, did you know that, let's say, 6 out of 10 construction companies, they're taking or trucking companies are bad. But let's say for a trucking company, they take the fuel out of the tank. I'll give them something that's almost astonishing or scary, and this way they're able to track it. So with fuel, we actually have fuel cards that you're able to track the exact amount of liters, where it's going, where they're spending it, if they're buying snacks. I will put I will ask them those questions. Are you looking at that? Do you know if your employees are buying snacks on top of your fuel? So that's kind of how I'll do it. And 9 times out of 10, they're not going to say no to free money.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the biggest challenge was always, where do you start looking? Because easy is low hanging fruit. Big ticket items, like we can move the needle. But like we mentioned, so with the boat image, there's all these little micro cracks everywhere that can lead up to something failing. And that's, I think, the challenge that we have when we walk in too. Again, I talked about the third-party logistics for large institutional customers is not a significant cost line on their P&L per location. Now, as an organization, yeah, it can be compounded and start being like, wow, we're the essentially, I could basically speak for one of them. They would literally be one of the largest trucking companies in the United States if they were a trucking company, just looking at their internal resources, right? But they still don't have the capacity to fill all their customers' needs with their internal resources. And so now like I said, you have to use third-party logistics. But when we approach them and saying, hey, listen, not only can we help reduce your cost, but we can also help your team say yes to more orders so actually generate revenue by increasing capacity on an as needed basis. But what happens is they're like, yeah, that's all great and fine, but I've got this bigger thing that I have to attack over here. So right now, the whole third party stuff is going to just have to sit on simmer, and we'll get back to it when we can get back to it. You know, you're talking about stuff like where it's telecom, large contracts, so maybe a team that's in their purchasing department looks at us as for a whole. But a lot of these smaller independent contractors that maybe have, let's say employees less than 50, right? Do they have the time to say, hey, you know what? The telecom thing, right? Like we'll get to it, but right now we got 4 projects that are not on, deadline. I've got invoices that are, 90 days past due. I got to figure out like how the house doesn't burn down before I figure out which audio jack is not working in the wall. Like, how do you reposition their brains to think about those little things?
That's a great question because I do sometimes that, that does they're like you said, they're very focused on the second piece of what you just said is like the actual work. And I just show them what we've done for other companies. You know, do you like for example, and I have it here. 40% on waste. I'll even show them where they're actually missing out and what they're not even asking. For a roofing company, we did 50,000 last month. For a carpenter, we saved them over 30,000 on their on their small shipping. It's I get in front of them and I show them the numbers. And when I give them the opportunity for that audit, that they don't have to implement the changes until they see it, I'm not gonna say it's a slam dunk, but it's usually pretty easy, and then once I go into their QuickBooks, I find even more things, just like how you would find on their P&L. Um, Sometimes it does take time, not everyone is gonna get it on the first shot, but then once I do, they're like, "I should have done this before." I'm like, "Yes, you should have." There are some perfect times, though, that I would say is a good time to tackle them. Um, right after tax season, because then their accountant goes, "Oh, hold on. What's happening here, here, and here?" And they only do the taxes part. They don't look at the bookkeeping side. So that's an opportunity of where I get them. Trade shows, I speak at events. I would say there is some pushback, but you got to keep working at it. Like people approach me all the time I got 3 people today on my LinkedIn for Google Ads. You know, you just have to, you gotta keep going. You gotta keep, they might be not now, it might be next week. One thing they actually taught me is, and actually how I've gotten a lot of people in construction is handwritten letters. So to get past certain gatekeepers, or if I've spoken to somebody in a networking event, I'll actually write them a handwritten letter to the office. And I've actually seen it in Zoom backgrounds where I can actually see my card. So I would say too, even if you don't get them now, it's always in the follow-up. Like you got to keep going.
I want to pivot briefly to technology. So that is something that just is omnipresent and exponentially growing. And I'm curious if there are any digital tools that you find or would want to shout out that really help in finding these savings or implementing these savings that, a listener might, something that might pique their interest, like, oh, maybe I should look into that. Is there any like go-to tools that you're just like, oh man, these guys are great and I love using them?
I think it depends on the scale of the company. So there's Jobber, there's Lumber. Lumber's amazing. It's an all-in-one tool. They've got everything: accounting, project management, bookkeeping. Um, Procore, of course, is at the top of the chain. Now with Procore, the only thing I heard from them is to for a lot of bids to come through, a lot of them are gonna come through Procore versus some of the other ones. But I would also say you could even I've even seen some construction companies when I'm speaking to them, they're starting to build out their own tools through AI. So I wouldn't say when it comes to saving on materials, I've seen some AI tools there. Um, when it comes to the softwares, those I think are the big 3 that I see quite a bit, or Service Titan is another one. So I but the biggest thing one other thing I wanna say here is people are very focused on tech. I think the more you spend in construction, the more you spend on optimizing your tech, you're losing out on the actual job. That's what I've also noticed.
Yeah, we had a guest on that kind of reminds me um, quite a bit. Is that his job is kind of like a technology auditor. Like that's what he does, where he's going to look at the tech that you utilize and basically point out the ones that really aren't helping you and might be wasting time, and he's all about tech reduction and or consolidation. He doesn't necessarily think that there should be a tech solution for everything. It's tech implements or tech implementing tech where it's valuable, where it does save time and money, but that is not a solution for everything, because at the end of the day, someone's got to swing a hammer. Until we got robots that can do it, like the rubber has to meet the road at some point, and sometimes technology gets in the way of that action that ultimately is needed in the construction industry.
Absolutely. Think about how many subscriptions you have. I just did a whole section, like a whole audit of my Visa bill, and I was like, nope, gone, gone. Haven't used that, gone.
Yeah, and you wonder, like, how long have I been paying for that?
Well,
You
they
know,
have
that's
an app out here in the States. I think I don't know if it's Rocket or something like they do commercials where like, yeah, you link all your finances in and they can tell you like, here, you have a subscription here, you have a subscription there, and you can like cancel them right there, like within the app, and it's done.
Yep. Shout out to Rocket Money. I use them, and I've been very happy with using them.
I mean, I'm not
From
going to throw you under the bus, but I mean, at the same time, we've talked about on other podcasts that society is
who are we
moving.
throwing under the bus? Me or our guest?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm gonna throw you under the bus because you
Oh,
use
that's fine.
Rocket
Yeah,
Money,
bring it
right?
on.
Erica's not going to get thrown under the bus here. But it's like, we have this gluttonous society, like we talk about, like we literally have boxes showing up to our house and we don't even remember what we ordered. Like the amount of Amazon, FedEx, and UPSs that come to the house at different times during the day. And I'm like, really? Like I just saw somebody like 10 minutes ago and you're wearing the same uniform. Could you guys synchronize something? But where I'm going to run right over JP's forehead is, like, how do you have so many subscriptions that you don't know what you have, that you need a third-party app to remind you that you're paying for something that you don't need? I'm like, wait, what? Like my kids, I'm like, what do you mean
And
you
what's
have
ironic
this?
about that statement is that the third party app is itself a subscription, Scott. Does it audit itself? Does it say, "Oh, this Rocket Money, what's this here? You don't need that
Like, do
anymore."
you have so much stuff that you forgot what you have and it's just on auto bill? It's like, wait, what? But I mean,
I'm
I'm not sure if you're asking for an answer to this question, because we're
no,
going to
I'm just
dive
gonna
into
keep
personal
backing
the
up
world of
over your
personal
brain.
finance.
It's okay. You know what, JP? I have stuff coming every day, and sometimes I open the door. I'm like, what was supposed to come today? So
Yeah, but you have subscriptions like that where you're just like, wow, I didn't know I was paying like $49 a month for this, and I've been doing this for 9 months. I don't even
I
recognize
think
the
what it does
vendor
is
on my
it does a good job of
Visa.
reminding you of the stuff you're spending money on, because some of the stuff makes sense. Like, I'm going to keep that, but it reminds you too, because when you add it all up, you're all like, wow, maybe I should cut back. And we do that at least once a year. We do a digital purge where it's all right, we're canceling every subscription. And then once we decide that we need it back, we'll add it back. But we're going to cancel them all, and then we'll see what happens. And there's usually a couple that never get renewed. So
But can you do that in business? Can you basically,
yes.
as a business owner, just be like, hey, we're going to do a cancellation of everything and restart? Or is it coming in chunks?
So I find that's where businesses are not paying attention to it, and that's where we come in, and that's just not just subscriptions. But let's say, for example, Microsoft or Google or even a PDF software where you have to, like DocuSign, where you have to sign something. I've seen so many people spending, they'll have two subscriptions and then they don't understand why.
Oh, don't get me started on Microsoft. The amount of invoices that come in at different times for small dollars. I'll go to our dev. I'm like, how many subscriptions do we have? Because we literally just got 36 bills from Microsoft, a small incremental. I can't even tell when they start or stop or what they're even for.
Yeah, well, see and that's one of them, right? But I've noticed a lot of businesses, they're like, listen, we need this service. This is how we operate. and we're just going to move forward. We're going to focus on the other pieces. And that's where I'll go in each and every line item. And I'm like, why do you need this? Telecom, for example, construction workers and anyone in construction rentals, um, contractors, you don't need 100 gigs of data. What are you doing with 100 gigs of data? You know what's happening is you're sharing that with your family. So then they can get a smaller plan, and they hotspot it. They transfer the data when they're at home. No, those are the things we also notice too. Or like I mentioned with fuel, things that they just pay the fuel bill. They don't realize that some people will sift it out. Or let's use like trucks, for example. So landscapers, they have all this technology now on how they're stopping at lights, how they're accelerating, what the weather's like. That makes a big difference in how they're treating your trucks and how they're treating your equipment. Those are like just even beyond subscriptions, even going into those nitty-gritties. We've there's all kinds of things. All kinds of things.
That's where technology is changing the game. Like one of the things, part of our service that we do, because we created, as you probably know, is like the Uber for construction. So typical third-party hauling, I got an hourly rate, it's a 2-hour minimum, and when I'm done, right? And even LTL trucking, it's like we have a rate per mile, and if I get stuck on the 10 because there's an accident, then usually the trucker's kind of like, well, I got screwed on this one because I'm stuck for 2.5 hours. And then what we've done is we look at the total process, and we're not even upcharging for it, to the point where you can say, okay, you have somebody on the way. This is how long it's going to take. You can actually look at the turn times within your job sites or organizations, saying, the individual arrived here at 8 o'clock in the morning. He didn't even get access to the equipment until 8:30. So there's a problem there with efficiency. So you can probably, increase that. Then it took them, 17 minutes to load, and then they were on their way. And then you track the backside on the customer end, from, let's say, the rental company to the contractor, and say, on average, every time we send a driver to your job site, they wait 28 to 48 minutes just to like get access to the site, and then they unload and everything else. So you take that data, you figure out where there's efficiencies, and then the sale is that contractor says, I don't want to pay any more than $25 each way for delivery. You're like, that's great. But every time we go to your job site, you make the driver wait on average 30 minutes. So I need to charge you like $30, and I've got the data to show why. Because in legacy, no one knows. It's like, well, you got here, and then when you left, I don't hear from you. I don't know what's happening until you send me an invoice 15 days later, and then I'm just going, wait, what day was that? I don't even remember what happened that day.
Exactly. And then that's where you're just that story that you just mentioned. That's where you're uncovering all those operational inefficiencies. And this is why projects are delayed. We have this LTR in Toronto. It's like a subway, or not a subway, a streetcar that just goes back and forth. It was a joke, but they had a quinceañera because it took 15 years to finish this thing.
Yeah.
But everything was always delayed.
It is, and it's labor productivity is the goal that you're trying to find. I mean, I've worked job sites where we figured out, where do we put the porta potties? How far away is it, and how long does it take somebody to walk? I mean, those are just small labor efficiencies. And then we had another project in downtown Manhattan, building a high rise. And I was kind of we're watching like all the laborers go down into the city, grab a sandwich, come back. And I'm thinking, how much time does that take? When like the light bulb was like, why wouldn't you just franchise a Subway on the 17th floor as you're building, put a sandwich shop in, and then as you move up every 10 floors, you repurpose it and you push it up. Now, I don't know about health codes and stuff, but I mean, think about like the amount of business that you would get just from people not having to go all the way down and going all the way into the city, right? To just go get something for,
See, you think like that, which is fantastic. Now, a lot of construction companies, and rentals, they don't think like that. You know who thinks like that? McDonald's. Every McDonald's they put in, there's a reason why the sink is in a certain spot. There's a reason why the fryer is in a certain area. They're optimizing their space for how people interact to get that product out fast. But construction is just about, okay, we have the architectural plans, let's go. It's they don't think about McDonald's is a real estate company. They're technically not a fast food company. They're thinking about how to maximize the space, but that doesn't unless you're at a construction site trying to put 10 homes, which you should have put 6, they're not maximizing how the people are working in the space. But I like that perspective that you just said.
That's kind of the cause of some of the pushback that you experience when you're trying to convince someone, hey, just let me take a look. Let me show you, and then I'm convinced that I'm going to open your eyes. And then after that, it's kind of a two-part here. What is implementation like? Are they on the hook for making a lot of these changes, or do you end up being able to implement a lot of these savings all on your end? So it's like kind of hands off, where it's like they get to keep working and you get to do your thing, and all of a sudden they're saving money.
So we do all the implementation. In fact, one of the things, the best parts of working with us is even 6 months down the road, it's still hands off. Think of us like financial advisors. You can go into a DIY investment account, and if you do that, you're gonna be looking at it every Friday, or and moving your stocks around, and moving it into different pools. But with us, what we'll do is we're gonna say, "Oh, you know what? Let's say you come back to us and you have an issue with your telecom." We'll say, "You know what? Okay, this particular company, you're out. We'll move it to somewhere else because they didn't earn the business." So that's something that we're able to do as well. We're able to go back to the drawing board. I don't think it's necessarily pushback when it comes to operations, because once we start, see how today we just uncovered so many different things when it comes to, we started with pricing and then operations and how inefficient things are. I think the biggest pushback, especially in construction, is just the individuals themselves. I've noticed it is they're so catty. I don't know how to explain this, but there's just a lot of politics just with who likes who and who talks to this person. I've never seen that in any other industry. It is the word don't want to use is cutthroat, but it's just how you guys, I shouldn't say you guys, but just the industry overall interacts. I think sometimes that's the biggest pushback, is getting to that person um that is at the top of the food chain, and they end up liking whatever it is that you do. Because think about, even just when you're at the bottom, you're like, "Well, why is this change happening?" Well, so and so is talking to this person, and they paid them off here, or whatever the case may be. I find it's just a lot of politics. I don't think it's necessarily the operation side, it's more of that human interaction. That's the biggest, I would say, hurdle, but once you get over it, I think it's fine.
Yeah, there's those you kind of break it down, like there's the gatekeeper, right? To get to somebody in an influential, say, hey, we really need to take a look at this. And then as you layer through large organizations, people with the C-suite, they don't really work in the business, and they're not going to tell and mandate that you have to do it this way. They're going to say you have option A, B, and C. Those are the 3 that you can align with, figure it out. And then I think where you guys come in, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're like, I can come in first as an auditor, give you a perspective, right? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you better optics. Once we have better optics, then I'm going to move out of an auditor into a coach. And I'm going to say, which one of these optics would you like to entertain? And I'll help you to figure out how to maximize your return on that from a coaching capacity. But at the end of the day, you got to do this shit. You have to basically own it. You've got to be in it, just like you said with a financial advisor. Hey, I want to basically look at my finances in the middle of the quarter to make sure that we're investing in the right places. And then I want to look at the end of the quarter to see, okay, are we doing the same thing over next quarter? And I think that's probably where you maneuver, right? Between auditor, then coach, then a little bit of accountability, but softened because it's really their decision, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And where do you get stuck the most? Is it in the coaching lane, or is it in the opportunity to give them a perspective lane, or is it the accountability lane?
You know what? Accountability is the least. I would say it's the opportunity lane. And then once they see it, then they tell all their friends. And I'm like, I told you to, if you would have listened to me ahead of time, I would have even got you even more money. I think it's like an accountant, right? It's the trust. They don't believe that I'm gonna give them 100K. They don't believe that just by looking at their services, their vendors, that I'm gonna give them 100K. And once I tell them, listen, I'm gonna do it for free until I find it, then once they see it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I should have did this earlier." That's the it's an ac Think about it. Are you gonna go to anybody to have them look at your books? Or if someone comes up to you and says, "You know what? We're gonna do a high risk, I'm gonna put all your investments into an 80% at a high risk." What are you gonna say to that? You're gonna be like, I don't know you. I don't trust you." So that element does take time in terms of trust. And that's where, in the last question that you asked, it's that human element that I have to get past the politics. And I have to understand too how the company structure works, who talks to who's friends with with this person. Sometimes they'll have GFL. It'll be somebody in, let's say, GFL, and they don't want to switch, waste or merchant services because that's their friend. So that's where it takes a bit of time.
Yeah, JP and I, we talk all the time with our team and our business structure for our customer end. We break them up into 3 groups, right? You have your influencer, your approvers, and then your buyers. And each one of those individuals you've got to, massage differently. And then once you're through, let's say the influencer, let's say it's the outside salesperson saying, we need this service, my customer all the time, we can't do anything. Operations has got an acronym of SPT, which is the sales prevention team. I'm trying to basically just, help my customer out, and you won't basically open your eyes. So we get them to chirp about an opportunity. Then the buyer comes in and goes, well, I would love to do it, but I don't want to get in trouble. And someone's got to approve this. And then you got the approver on the top end that says, this looks good. I don't do this day to day. If they would stop complaining and get their job done, I'll approve it. And then we go through that cycle. And then once we're through that cycle, the network effect happens. And remember, JP, when you were doing the sales, it's like, hey, I got this one location. They finally got to give me an opportunity to use us. We performed. And now all of a sudden, someone of their, another location calls them and goes, how'd you get that done? They're like, oh, yeah, we're using this new service called Pharaoh. Call JP. And JP's like, yeah, we can do this. And they're like, oh, well, I don't want FOMO. I want to basically get this too. So then it's the compound, because now they got the credibility effect from somebody that they trust, who trusts JP, who now JP's got now 2 people to trust them. And then the dominoes start falling.
Exactly. So it was a bit in the beginning. I did have to work that network. It wasn't easy. But once I got in, it was a domino effect. This person tells this person, and in construction, everyone's always talking. They're either out with it. Every time I've gone to an event, I don't smoke anymore, but they're all outside smoking. When they're outside smoking, they're talking. They go back in smoking, then they're talking again. They're always talking about, who's doing what, this. They're always exchanging information.
Yeah, we describe it as belly to belly is kind of how we do business a lot of times. Is that you got to be in front of them, you gotta shoot the shit a little bit, and that's how you kind of build that trust. Erica, remind me, how many years have you been doing this in the construction niche now?
It's been about 2 years. So
Cool.
how I one other thing I didn't mention, how I even got into this was in school, I actually studied urban planning. And that's actually where I
Interesting. Okay.
first saw a lot of problems.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Interesting.
hear about the bathroom in San Francisco, the $17 million bathroom.
Oh, I thought it was a sidewalk.
Yeah, no, I may be inflating
San
the
Francisco,
numbers,
it's
but
usually a
even
sidewalk.
no, it's where they went through the planning process of like, all right, we want to have a restroom that's publicly available for those who are homeless or just need a place or whatever, and they start specking it out, and they're like, yeah, it's gonna be like 17.5 million or some absurd number, something stupid, and then maybe not 17, but still like 7. But then someone comes in, some contractors like, hey, we will provide all of the labor and all of the materials. We will do this for free. What's it going to cost now? Still was going to cost 1.7 million just in all of the like the fees and the all the regulations and stuff that happen on the government side. So it doesn't surprise me that you saw opportunity in urban planning.
Oh, I thought you were talking about California's bullet train that's
That too.
still.
Hey, it's everywhere. Like we just can't get out of our own way sometimes.
Uh, it's a challenge, and I know it's hard looking from the outside in, but to your point, Erica, it's like if we were to take and step back and go and like almost reverse engineer things and be like, okay, draw it up, but don't do anything yet. Let's work it backwards. What are all the things that we're gonna have to see before we just say, hey, throw it up there and we'll just pick what sticks and we'll, when we run out, we'll throw more stuff at it. I mean, do you see, like, is that what they do? Is just kind of like, just throw shit at the wall and whatever sticks we'll use and whatever doesn't, we'll move on.
I find on the like on the books side of things, that's what's happening. Or when it comes to marketing, that's exactly what they're doing. And even when I was on the marketing side, they were all they were doing that too. Like, oh, you know what? We should try this ad and do this and do that. And maybe we should have, this complimentary service. I'm finding they would do that on that side, but not in the actual, we're gonna, when they're pouring the concrete. But here's the thing, when it comes to, I would say, the vendor side, they are trying out different things all the time, especially waste management companies. So with that, they are throwing spaghetti at the wall. Merchant services, they actually don't touch merchant services. They're not throwing spaghetti at the wall there. Compressed gases, they are. I've seen them change quite a bit, but that's part of it too, right? It's like insurance. I'm sure everyone shops for insurance every year, right? You want to get a better deal.
I'm dealing with one right now, just on the personal side, where in the States, they have this thing called like LexisNexis, where your underwriters, insurance companies, when you go for a policy for a quote, they're like, it's kind of like a credit report, right? So we pulled one on our 17-year-old daughter and like, oh yeah, she had an accident in October 15th of 25. And I was like, huh, funny. We were all in Hawaii on a family vacation. How does that happen? We'll finally get a copy of the report. They've got someone with the same name, not the same vehicle, not the same parent in Maryland showing that there's a $28,000 claim on there for us. And I'm like, how does this work? And then trying to get a hold of somebody at LexisNexis. Yeah, you're probably waiting weeks to get that response. But it's just like these industries sometimes it's just like, man, I want to do the right thing, but it's hard to get the right thing done. And then I just get tired. And then I'm like, I'll just live with whatever it is until somebody like your team can come in and be like, no, I'll be the put bull. I'll grind through all this stuff until we get you leveled out.
Well, that's the thing with us too, right? We're not gonna wait on hold. We're like I say the PNG that talks to Walmart, or Walmart talks to PNG. So Walmart will say to PNG, you know what, we have our product in the store. Well, you know what? You better make it for this price for the same quality.
Or it's not in the store. Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So, that's something that's what we do all day long is we're fighting, but because you don't wanna go through that, and especially with insurance. I just had to go through insurance too, and I'm thinking to myself, I gotta pay $5,000 on my for insurance for my car. I don't have like it that's high. I don't have any accidents, no tickets, but when you need help.
They find out how to deny your claim, and then when they actually do accept your claim, they go back to you next year and be like, "Hey, you know what? Your premium's going up." And you're like, "I'd much rather just put some money in a coffee can and pay off stuff when it happens because, like, you're really just helping me in case my car goes off of a bridge and happens to land on something, you know? That's what you're there for, but the day-to-day stuff, you just charge me money for risk tolerance, that's it." I'll finish with this, kinda land this plane too, where it's like, give the listeners, like, two parts. One, from if you're a construction company or, uh, a buyer, rental company, somebody in the trades, like, what would be the first thing that you would tell them to do, like, right after tax season? Say, "Hey, you got everything, you got a good optics of where you've been, we're gonna go about where you're going." What is, like, a 1, 2 thing that is the first thing they should do?
Right after tax season, first thing that you should look at is your fuel consumption, your telecom, and your waste disposal right away. If you're using compressed gases or you've got shipping, that's also another one to look at. And if you most contractors will do cash or ACH, but merchant services right off the bat, that's an easy like 50 to 100 grand back into your pocket. That's even better than your tax refund.
And that's especially goes double for companies who have never really done this. Like if they've never done kind of an internal audit or kind of cost benefit analysis internally, like that's like if you're listening and that kind of describes you as like, oh, I've never considered this. Like the fruit may be ripe on your tree.
9 times out of 10, we can find savings. If if we don't, that means you're doing a fantastic job, but 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna find something. And when I find it, that's money for you.
Give you access. That's what you're asking for. Give you access to find the opportunity because you've mined it before and you know what you're looking for. They don't. You know what gold looks like. They know what dirt looks like. It's not the same. Okay. Just let me go dig and pull something out. Now, the second part, I'm going to be very specific and I'm going to paint you in a corner for these answers. So, from a vendor side, right? Somebody like us in Faro, we want to say, hey, we know Erika is going to come in and show you what gold looks like here pretty soon, but I'm going to help give you the tools to go dig it out of the mine. Number one, from a marketing perspective, how do you get these people to start thinking about these opportunities when really, to your point, they just want to go home at the end of the day, not think about their company and crack a beer, and they're firefighting all day long because they're just you have to breathe as hard because it's so busy. How do you approach it from a marketing side? And then the second would be now that they have exposure from the brand that, okay, I can do this. How do you make sure that you get that access to say, all right, you got to use this. This is like, I just brought you the tool that you needed and you were complaining about. It's in front of your face now. Like grab it, buy it, and start swinging. So how would you do marketing and then tactic?
Okay. So you know what? From a marketing perspective, I'm gonna share with you guys this fantastic tool that I have from ChatGPT. It was built out for us. And essentially what it does is it looks at your target audience and it helps you understand what keeps them up at night. So for example, let's use construction, right? They work 15-hour days. How would it feel to actually have dinner with your family again? Or have you missed another soccer game? I take things that are from outside their work life and what they're missing out on. Those are just two examples of how I actually market to them to say, what is actually keeping you up at night? Oh, I was unable to pay attention to my kid's soccer game today, or hockey game, or I missed that, or my kid's Christmas concert. That's how I bring it in. Um Another example that I'll bring to is profit margins. Soon enough, accountants are going to look at their profit margins and they're going to tell them, hey, you know what? Here's something that you need to cut back on. So I'll utilize that when they finalize their taxes to also bring that in and talk about it. Because if you think about it, the industries that you and I are in, they're not sexy industries. So that's how I approach it when it comes to the marketing piece is what are you missing out on, and how can we change that? And what is that going to do for you in 6 months? What if I give you an extra 50 grand and then you take that 50 grand and you invest it in another employee or some marketing or something else that you need for your business? What is that going to do for you? So I kind of that I look at people's day. You know, how was your day a shit show? Why was it a shit show? Okay, well, like you said earlier with operations, well, this was behind. Well, let's change that. I take that that's how I market it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal way to actually, you know, empathize with their problems. That I think most people have an awareness, right? That they have opportunity. And then the very few people say, like, I actually want to change it rather than just, hey, that's how I am. That's what I do. But it goes back to, I think, that fundamental thing. I truly believe that people want to be led. They just don't want to be told how to do it. You gotta balance that out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yep.
Awesome. Well, we've already been chatting for an hour here. It's been great having you, Erika. And this is really cool. I hope that some folks see this and reach out because, yeah, there's always money left on or under the table or in the couch or somewhere. And we're talking about some big tables and couches when it comes to construction companies. So um, I hope that some folks take advantage of this conversation.
And thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for sticking with us after the third booking. Not giving up.
Don't worry, it happens. We're here, we're good, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
Well, everyone, that is a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Build. We took away some real valuable lessons and insights, and I hope that you did as well.
If you enjoyed this episode, we would ask that you subscribe so you can never miss an update. If you're a thought leader looking to innovate in the construction industry, let's talk. We'd love to connect and hear your thoughts.
You can find Beyond the Build on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, plus anywhere else that you listen. And if you'd like to learn more about how Faro is changing logistics in the construction industry, please visit our website at faronow.com.
Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, be humble, serve others, and make an impact.